Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Samantha McCoy. I'm the service coordinator today, and I'm currently serving as the chair of our Sunday Services Ministry team, and I've been a member here for a little over 20 years. This is the time to silence your phone or any other electronic device you may have with you, if you have not already taken care of that. I'm so glad that you're able to join us this morning because you, every single one of you, here in the fellowship hall or online, you are an essential part of our worship and celebration today. Whether today is your first, 100th, or 1,000th Sunday in our midst, as I said, here in the fellowship hall or online, we are stronger because you are with us. And as we gather this morning, we respectfully acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional and unceded land of the Paugussett people. This morning, Reverend Tony will conclude our month of services on the theme of renewal with a reflection about knowing when to stop and start over. And before we get started this morning, I invite you to greet your neighbors either here, next to you, across the room, joining us online. Say hello, introduce yourself, or give a wave. In terms of announcements this morning, there are a couple of things I want to point out, and one of them is on the screen. Some are in the order of service, but one is particularly not in the order of service. You may notice that if you look at your papers or online, it doesn't list a musician. We had a little bit of a communication disconnect. But Cheryl and Barbara are here, and we're so excited that they are here and they are going to play for us. So it was a wonderful gift when I walked in here this morning and found them rehearsing. So that is delightful, and we are grateful. So thank you, and we apologize that you didn't get your line in the order of service. Okay, so that is thing number one. Thing number two is if you also look through your order of service, you'll notice that there is a note about a survey from the Sunday Services Ministry team. And obviously, if you're looking at it here on paper, that link doesn't do you a whole lot of good. But if you look at your email, either from this Sunday morning or the coming email later in our this week, you will get a link to that survey. And we'd love to hear from you with some of your thoughts about what you're noticing in services, themes you're interested in hearing about, things you want to know more about, or feedback you have to give our team. So I invite everyone to participate and send us your feedback. You'll have the chance to respond anonymously if you'd like to, or you can attach your name to your feedback and one of us can speak with you if you want to speak further. So I wanted to point that out. And the other thing, which we do have here on the slides, is about a documentary called My Name is Pauli Murray, about a genderqueer Black civil rights lawyer, poet, scholar, and Episcopal priest who was ahead of their time. And that documentary is going to be shown, this was last Thursday. Well, if you missed it, I will tell you this. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime because that's where I watched it and it's amazing. So I guess we got our dates a little off kilter here because that already happened. But if you have Prime, go look it up or find it wherever. They were a tremendous presence, and I encourage you to learn more about Pauli Murray. Okay, so let's keep moving from that. Please check out the other announcements in your order of service. And I think it is time for our chalice lighting. Oh. Yes, that's right. Val had mentioned to me that the order of service talks about chair exercise this Wednesday, but there will not be chair exercise this Wednesday. So if you were planning on that, please make a note and hold off for this week. All right, now we will move to our chalice lighting affirmation. We make this time and this place holy simply by being together with each other, and we begin by lighting the flaming chalice, which is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. Please join me as Suzanne lights the chalice. Push the little button up, the thing at the bottom, slide it up, and then that, yep. Okay, so please join me in reciting the words which you see on the screen and in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant. to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. And now we invite you to join us in our hymn of welcome, which is number 347, Gather the Spirit. This one will be on video. So once it gets started, please rise and body your spirit and join in. And now I invite you to join me in our children's affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. So today's story is called The Heart and the Bottle, and it was written by Oliver Jeffers. Once there was a girl, much like any other, whose head was filled with all the curiosities of the world, with thoughts of the stars, with wonder at the sea. She took delight in finding new things, until one day she had her feelings hurt. It hurt so bad, she thought her heart was going to break. So, feeling unsure, she thought the best thing to do was to put her heart in a safe place, just for the time being. So she took her heart out and put it in a bottle and wore it around her neck. That seemed to fix things, at first. Although in truth, nothing was the same. She forgot about the stars. She stopped taking notice of the sea. She was no longer filled with the curiosities of the world and didn't take much notice of anything. But she did notice how awkward and heavy the bottle had become around her neck. But at least her heart was safe. It might never have occurred to her what to do until she met someone smaller and still curious about the world. The smaller one asked her a question about the sea, and there was a time when the girl would have known how to answer her, but not now, not without her heart. And it was at that moment she decided to take her heart back out of the bottle. But she didn't know how. She couldn't remember. Nothing seemed to work. The bottle couldn't be broken. She tried dropping it from the top of her house, but it just bounced and rolled. It rolled right down to the sea. And it stopped rolling and bouncing right at the feet of a smaller person, still curious about the world, who just reached right in and took the heart out and handed it back to the girl. And she put it back where it belonged, and she was curious about things again and delighted to find new things. So ends our story.
This time we gather, it's a time to be together in quiet and contemplation. We come, some of us weary with the weight of the world. Some of us come bursting with joy and on top of that world. And probably many of us arrive somewhere in between that, doing okay. But this is a place for all of it. However you come here is all right, and whoever you are is all right. And we try to make this place together a place where what's in our heart, the joys and the sadness and the grieving and the celebration, can be welcomed and acknowledged, seen and heard, a place where we support each other, a place where we give thanks, a place where we share what we call here the milestones of our lives. So I invite those of you who would like to share a milestone silently to come forward and do so by putting a stone in the water. All of these milestones in our hearts, and holding in our hearts with them everything that's been left unspoken this morning. Let us enter a minute of silence and rest in that breath and that peace. Having stopped for that breath of life, let us join in singing Spirit of Life.
This morning, our reading is an excerpt from Walk Out, Walk On, A Learning Journey into Communities Daring to Live the Future Now by Margaret J. Wheatley and Deborah Fries. As old systems fail, a few people walk out. They walk on to experiment with new ways of thinking and organizing that enable them to find solutions to seemingly unsolvable problems. At first, they feel isolated and alone, limited in what they can achieve. They often don't realize there are other walkouts. Walk-ons find each other and connect. Together, they learn quickly, take greater risks, and support one another to continue their pioneering work. New systems are born from their efforts. So ends the reading. When you give your time and energy to the work of this congregation, and when you donate to its financial support, you are giving gifts to each other. Each one gives to and receives gifts from all our members and friends. Together, we give to the community around us. To make your gift this morning, you may use the link or QR code that is posted in the chat as well as projected here on the screen. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. And of course, the plates will pass momentarily here in the Fellowship Hall. Thank you for your generosity.
I loved baseball growing up. I loved baseball when I was a kid. Out of all the things you do when you're a kid that I did when I was a kid, I didn't do any of them as much as I played baseball. And it was a little rough too, because I had asthma as a kid. Well, still do, but it was really bad when I was a kid. And so was an allergy to grass pollen. So the first year I was eligible for Little League, I couldn't even play. I was too sick from being out there. But then medicines got better miraculously in the 70s. And the next season I was good to go. And I played and I played and I played. And I was pretty good at it for a while. And as I got to be near the end of Little League, I realized I was not good enough to make the all-star travel team. But, I wasn't going to be one of the best players anymore. So what? I loved baseball. And I just kept playing. So the next thing was Babe Ruth League. Do they have Babe Ruth League in Connecticut? It wasn't quite as good. When I was in Little League, I had a great coach named Paul Russo. Wonderful example of a coach for kids, right? Never yelled, wasn't mean. None of those bad adult coaches for kids cliches. None of them. He had none of them. He was great. He also had two sons on the team who, to this day, I'm still amazed he did not favor. None of us thought he favored his two sons over the rest of us, which I thought was amazing. And when the first girl signed up to play in our Little League, no one wanted her but Paul Russo. He taught a lot of good lessons. Probably doesn't even know he did. And so when I got to Babe Ruth League, the coach was different. This guy yelled all the time. Like, what was this guy so angry about? We would joke that he really wanted to be a football coach, but Leominster, Mass was a football town, so that stuff was already taken by other people. So I wasn't a starter, and I sat on the bench a lot, but I liked playing ball and I had fun. But he just kept grating on my nerves, this coach. And at one point, there was a couple of injuries and somebody went on vacation. And so I was in the starting lineup for a number of games in a row. And that was awesome. And I did very well, as I remember. Not that my memory's embellished by time to make myself look better or anything, but it went well. And so when the first kid came back and I got sat down again, I was mad. But what I started to realize was that coach was an old boy in my hometown, which is one of those crazy working class sports towns where the old boys have younger boys become the next old boys. And they network, right? They do. They make that old boy network. And my dad was not one of them. In fact, neither were any of the other kids' dads who were on the bench with me. Interesting, that. And I started to realize for the first time in my life, life is not the meritocracy they're always telling me it is. And so when that kid came back and I started a game and got taken out for that kid, I went over to the coach and asked why. He started yelling at me. like right in front of everybody. And I took off my shirt, handed it to him, and quit. My dad says it was the first adult decision I ever made. So I quit baseball when I was 14. But I didn't give it up. A couple years later, I wasn't playing baseball, so I coached Little League instead. And at 16, I coached a team to our league championship. I had had some good examples of the kind of coach to be and not to be. The quitting and giving up are not the same thing. Yes, they can be used interchangeably to connote similar things sometimes, most especially when you're at the end point of whatever line you've been on and it's time to exit and bounce and get out. But I also agree with those who argue for a separation of quitting and giving up. There are indeed times when one should not quit or give up. There are times when pushing on against all odds is necessary and required. Recognizing those times when they come is important. But there are many times, in fact, most of the things that happen to us are not those times. And we need to give ourselves permission and other times to stop, to quit. Quitting is not always negative. We have a misconception in our culture that quitting is failure, and failure in our culture is the worst thing there is. But failure is how we learn. We experiment, we prototype, we try things on for size and see how they fit. Have you caught the viral commencement address from Roger Federer, the retired championship tennis player at Dartmouth? Oh my gosh. Now, for those who don't know how good Roger Federer was at tennis, he spent 302 weeks of his career as the world #1 player. 237 of those in a row, which is the all-time record for being #1 most weeks in a row. It's important to understand how good he was for the stuff he said. He won 20 major tournaments in his career, third all-time behind Djokovic and Nadal. He won Wimbledon a record still 8 times. This is just a bit of what he said. He said, people who succeed know they'll lose again and again and again and have learned how to deal with it. When you're playing a point in tennis, it has to be the most important thing in the world. But when it's behind you, it has to be behind you. Mindset is crucial because it frees you to fully commit to the next point. And then the one after that, and the one after that, with intensity and clarity and focus and the best you can bring in that moment. Now, as the son of a guy who was a tennis player and a high school and college tennis coach, and someone who has been a tennis player and a high school tennis coach myself, this is the sentence that grabbed me the most. Federer said, in the 1,526 single matches I played in my career, I won about 80% of them. But what percentage of points do you think I won winning those matches? Not quite 54% of the points. When you lose on average every other point, you learn not to dwell on every shot. Can you imagine that? Someone who might arguably be in the conversation of best tennis player to ever have lived barely won more than half the points he played. And that was the difference, that just over half. It's like the baseball adage people always go to, that you're an outstanding hitter in baseball if you succeed 3 out of 10 times. We miss this and we don't keep it in mind enough. We have to develop an agility, a muscle memory for quitting as much as we do for perseverance. Even when you win at an astonishing rate, you are most likely to barely break even on the road. And you have to realize that if you don't give up, you're still in the game. Federer's reminder that we have to move on to the next point if we're going to win the big battle and succeed in the long run in the big picture is a reminder to not give in to the sunk cost fallacy, right? The sunk cost fallacy is the argument that goes, you've invested your time, money, energy, spirit, and resources so much that they'll go to waste if you don't go through to the end. Whether or not going through to the end is a smart decision or not, we've sunk the cost. But the thing is, the cost is sunk. We've lost it already. We can't get it back. And sometimes the best thing to do is to write off those things we've already lost and move on. Don't waste good time, effort, energy, spirit, and money after bad. It's okay to quit. It's not necessarily the same as giving up. And we all run into that sunk cost dilemma and battle between quitting and giving up a lot in our lives. Maybe that point came for us in a business venture or a job. Maybe it was in a relationship. Neuroscience now tells us that the pain we feel when we stub a toe or break our leg is the same pain we feel when a relationship breaks up. It's the same centers of the brain. You know, maybe that was that sunk cost we couldn't let go. Maybe a sunk cost was in pursuit of a hobby. I play guitar. Over the years, I cannot tell you how many guitars I have played in people's houses that were so thick and full of dust, they barely made a sound anymore. We even experience sunk costs in terms of systems. In my career, I've seen congregations pursue things the way they've always done it until they close their doors. Even though there is a new and better way to do things, you don't have to keep doing that anymore. I think part of the national and worldwide anxiety about the rise of right-wing populism stems from the fact that many systems were designed for a 20th century civilization that doesn't exist anymore. And people are too afraid to dump them right off the sunk cost and move on and figure out new ways to do the things. And that's happening in government, in education, in economics, in politics. It's all over. And so hanging on and wanting to hang on leads to the something new being something old. Tyranny and fascism, totalitarianism, promising getting back to the old ways, the best thing to do, you know, making stuff great again and whatnot. Our culture values winning, striving to win, so much so that our entire society is built on it. Even our courts don't seek to find truth and justice. You go in there to win your case. They're competitive. I wonder what it would be like if they weren't competitive contests and the system was designed to really find out what happened and now what should be done. We don't flex our quitting muscles because we're rarely in places that teach us how or tell us that it's okay to do so. Quitters never win and winners never quit. Oh, that's just not true. It's just not true. Sometimes, very much, in fact, winners do quit. And it's good that they did. It can take a lot of courage to quit. Colin Kaepernick quit standing for the national anthem. Rosa Parks quit moving to the back of the bus. The Stonewall Rebels quit accepting police brutality and harassment just because they were gay. Sometimes quitting's a darn good thing to do. Sometimes it's the right thing and the just thing to do. Harvey Milk quit. Cesar Chavez quit. They didn't give up. Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries in our reading would say they walked out and walked on. Giving up is when we hand over control of our path and destiny to others. Done completely. And that's okay, you can do that. But then you're abdicating. It's like not showing up to vote. It's not a rebel stance, it's saying you're good with whatever happens. You may not be. Giving up is relinquishing connections to justice and equity. Giving up is abandoning hope. Quitting can be a compassionate ministry of pastoral care to ourselves, an exercise of character. So practice quitting. You can quit with me because I'm trying to quit. Try to quit the world of domination and exploitation. Try to quit the pursuit of power. Quit the idea that some types of people are better than other types of people. I'm walking out of that world. I don't want it anymore. Walk out with me. I want to walk into a new world. I want to walk on into a world powered by transformation and generosity, upheld by justice and equity, grounded in mutual interdependence and pluralism, and centered in love. Our hymn of celebration is Blue Boat Home. Hopefully this video will be on time. We don't know why it's running off, so let's see.
Lowly, I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edging thunder, casting questions into the deep. Drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue. Oh, I give thanks to the waves upholding me, and the great winds urging me on. Greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my home. Oh,
Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
My friends, when you do leave here today, walk out with that light of the chalice in your heart and walk on out into the world that needs that light so badly. Wherever you go, take that light with you in peace.
We had no idea that our post would be so apropos. If you're old enough